The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili held a meeting with Gilles Carbonnier, Vice President of the International Committee of the Red Cross. Irakli Garibashvili pointed out that the Georgian government appreciates the support of the International Committee of the Red Cross provided to the conflict-affected populations, meaning humanitarian aid for those living in Abkhazia and Kinvali region and along the occupation line.
The European Investment Bank, EIB, the Bank of the European Union, has provided a €6 million loan to TerraBank Georgia to support its local currency lending to micro, small and medium-sized enterprises in the country. Covered by a guarantee from the European Union, the EIB financing aims to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and to contribute to an economic recovery that puts Georgia on a long-term sustainable growth track. As part of the Team Europe, the EIB works hand in hand with the other EU projects implemented in Georgia under the EU for Business brand.
The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development and the European Union are stepping up their support for micro, small and medium-sized enterprises in Georgia in cooperation with TBC Bank. The package will allow companies to upgrade their products and services and bring them in line with European Union standards, modernize their production to boost their domestic competitiveness and operate more successfully on foreign markets.
In September 2021, 226,662 visitors visited Georgia, which is 349% more than in the same period of 2020. According to the report of the National Bank of Georgia, last month the country's economy received up to $162 million from international tourism, and in January-September 2021, the total tourism revenue amounted to around $865 million, which is 60% more than in 2020.
You are watching The Checkpoints with Elena Evangelishvili and myself. I'm David Jalogonia. This is the only English language program on business and economics produced and aired by Business Media Georgia, BMG.
It's 10 p.m. sharp, and we have many exclusives to share with you today. In the Checkpoints, you can hear voices of all the stakeholders relevant to doing business in Georgia: business, citizens, local and foreign experts, international financial institutions and development agencies, government and its advisors. You will basically hear all these voices today in the Checkpoints.
Very true, Elena. And let us then start with analyzing general trends of the economy and look at what the pace of the recovery is after the unprecedented COVID crisis. Our reporter Georgi Isakadze and his guest Etuna Mungishvili will tell us more.
Yes, David, and before the interview begins, let me mention a very appealing format, in my opinion, of this interview. Our viewers and followers will get a chance to be part of the presentation on different trends in the economy and be able to evaluate the recovery pace in the real time as the interview goes on.
New formats are the strong side of BMG in general, so here's the new type of interview with Etuna Mungishvili.
Etuna, thank you so much for being with us. I was impressed by your presentation during the Expo Georgia, which was like, I don't know, first maybe physical gathering after this crazy 500 days, which unfortunately still goes on. During this unprecedented period, I would like to analyze together with you how the general trends of the Georgian economy are recovering, like tourism, retail, and rental and residential as well. So could you be so kind to begin with the tourism itself? How do you evaluate the recovery trend generally of the Georgian tourism industry?
great pleasure to be on
Thank
here.
you. Pleasure is ours.
Many thanks for inviting. And yeah, tourism definitely is one of the topic that is quite hot in terms of pandemic. Recovery trend is getting positive. However, if we evaluate the last 9 months performance, we can say that about 25 to 30% have been recovered compared to 2019.
Okay.
So, which means that because of the lack of the international tourists, we cannot get to that great number that we had in 2019.
And it still was mainly dependent on the local tourist, yes?
Before pandemic, it was mainly dependent on international tourists because 70% of our tourists have been international travelers. Right now, the trend is changing because of travel restrictions. We don't have anymore that much international travelers. That's why mainly Georgian tourism right now is driven by the local tourism. That's why we had a very good performance in summer compared to other months. And it was driven by the local tourism, mainly by the local tourism, especially at the resorts, because people can go outside, and why not to try and explore Georgia.
So, and numbers and international visitors compared to 2019, it was about 30%, am I right?
Yes.
Which was expected, as you mentioned, during the presentation in Expo Georgia. So, what about predictions for the rest of the years? When do you expect the full recovery? And another figure, Etuna, what was to mention is that Colliers International, together with other analytical agencies, still considers that tourism is indirect 30% of the Georgian economy.
Yeah, so we have been working on projections very early before in the process of the pandemic, the last year. We are updating it time to time, but at this moment what we can say that we expect that full recovery when we can get back to 2019 is expected in 2024. Because all it's linked to partly to vaccination rates also in Georgia, because if we look at, for example, European countries, they have, European Union in total has somewhere between 65-70% of vaccination rate.
Yeah.
And if we make some kind of correlation to the tourism recovery, they have some kind of the same rate of tourism recovery. Of course, it's dependent, tourism recovery is dependent on other factors too. However, this is one of the main factors. So considering these vaccination rates too, we expect that we may need about 3-4 years to get back to the 2019 results.
Okay, got you. Residential market, what about it? You're saying, and you consider it as the strongest direction within the real estate.
So yeah, it had one of the good performance in terms of recovery.
For the 9 months.
For the 9 months, not only in 2021, but in 2022 too, because for Georgians generally, buying in real estate is a very good investment opportunity till now, and in pandemic it has stayed the same. So they are considering to buy flats in the economy segment or buy land, or so for them it's not only the way to consume something, but it's an investment opportunity for them too.
Something part of the culture.
Yeah, in 2022, what was interesting that about 80% of the transactions and market size of the residential market have been recovered. And in 2021, we have way much higher performance compared to 2019. So it means that the recovery process is quite healthy, because, for example, if in 2022 we had the government subsidy program, we don't have it in 2021. So the process is quite healthy, at least in Tbilisi.
Yeah.
So because in other regions it's a bit different, but in Tbilisi the process is quite
it's a bit lower activity, but you're pointing still Tbilisi, Batumi, Bakuriani and Godavari.
Yeah. So in Batumi, which was different type of investment opportunity, so it was kind of bound to tourism, increased tourism, because especially in summers when the people were coming, international travelers were coming here, they were registering right at the place. It has been changed a bit, of course, because of these travel restrictions, and that's why in 9 months we have slightly lower, but the same figure as we have in 2019. Because of this high dependence on the tourists. But still, the performance is not pessimistic.
So let's go through for the Tbilisi retail market, and there are also a few directions like high streets, it's shopping centers, as well as business center itself. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, so retail market was one of the active in the recent years before pandemic, especially the street retail. We have several high streets, we have very good mix of shopping centers, and the trend before pandemic was really good, getting healthy and getting very closer to the European market, what they have in terms of the tenant mix and tenant categories. But in pandemic, we saw that the main tenants, for example, such as F&B or fashion, they have started leaving the retail spaces. I'm talking about the high street, because of the curfew, because of the restrictions that we had. I'm talking about also in 2020. In 2020, we have made the analysis of the high streets, and about 170 tenants have left the retail spaces, which is a quite high number.
And that's why quarantine and all the
that's why we have the higher occupancy, vacancy rates. But and the bargaining power came to the tenants on the tenant side, because no more the leasers could say the rates they want to achieve, because if tenants cannot pay, then the bargaining power is on their side, of course. In shopping centers, this was a bit different. They did not have that much higher vacancy rates, because it's kind of one organism where all these tenants are gathered. So for the people, for others, it's kind of easy to access one place and get all the services, or they shop at one place. That's why it had kind of more good performance rather than the high street.
How Tbilisi office market is doing in general for this 9 months? What you can say?
So before pandemic, before the pandemic, 2 large business centers was announced to open on Chavchavadze Avenue, and they created the large supply, which generally market needs about 3-4 years to absorb that kind of large supply. That's why we have higher vacancy rates in offices. So we can't only blame it to the COVID-19, but because of the reason that just before COVID-19, these 2 business centers, actually there are 3 business centers, entered the market. However, we have checked also the net take-up rates, and net take-up is just half size than it was before pandemic. So generally in Tbilisi, the net take-up is about 10,000 square meters every year. And right now we have about 6,000 square meters. So we can say that it's still struggling. However, the trend is changing to hybrid models, when people are just keeping the offices but also working from home.
Etun, thank you so much for your visit, and I hope that upcoming months and quite difficult situation with the vaccination and the epidemic itself will not worsen the situation existing right now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much too. We update all the information. We have the platform RecFG, so it's kind of available. It's kind of part of our responsibility to share this information to other stakeholders.
Which is free to access.
Yeah, free to access RecFG, so other interested people can just visit and.
Thank you, and thanks to Colliers International for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Another trend that we can analyze together, David, is external trade and trends in exports and imports. In January-September 2021, the external merchandise trade of Georgia amounted to $10 billion and $9 million, 22.3% higher in the same period of last year, shows the data from the National Statistics Office of Georgia. According to the document, exports equaled $2 billion, around $3 billion, 24% higher to the same period of 2020, while the imports stood at $7 billion, 21.6% higher.
In January-September 2021, the share of the top 10 trading partners by exports in the total exports of Georgia amounted to 77.6%. The top partners were China, Russia, and Azerbaijan. What about imports? Top 10 trading partners in the total imports of Georgia amounted to 67.2%. The top partners were Turkey, Russia, and China.
And now we can overview major commodity groups by exports. First comes copper ores and concentrates with around $572 million, which is followed by ferroalloys with around $317 million, and natural grape wines around $166 million. In the top 10 rankings, we can also see mineral and freshwater, nuts, alcoholic beverages, t-shirts, knitted, gold, and natural or artificial mineral water as well.
Let us proceed with imports. The top import commodities in January-September 2021 were motor cars, whose imports equaled $632.5 million. The petroleum and petroleum oils followed in a list with $576.3 million. The copper ores and concentrates were third in a top important commodity list with $530.2 million. The list also includes medicaments, petroleum gases, telephone sets, automatic data processing mechanisms, and motor vehicles for the transport of goods, vaccines also, and wheat.
Another interview, David, that I would like to run after our short review of the situation in exports and imports is with the deputy head of the largest agency, that's Enterprise Georgia, which is responsible for business support, export promotion, and investments in Georgia's sectors. Our viewers and followers are already aware that from time to time we approach this agency for quick updates, and here is the current news.
Tornike, thank you so much for your time visiting Forbes Studio. Always pleasure hosting you.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be here. And of course, thank you for your interest.
Unlike Vegas, whatever happens in Dubai does not stay in Dubai. Minister of Economy, head of your agency, Mr. Hidureli, they highlighted the importance of your business trip to Dubai. Why it was so important, and can we talk about concrete follow-up for that visit?
Sure. It was definitely one of the more important visits that we have had for the past 2 years. We specifically prepared for this visit during this year as well, where myself and the director also visited Dubai beforehand to prepare for this particular visit. We actually pre-selected 8 different funds and companies which we studied ahead of time to learn about what could be interesting propositions for them to actually make during this visit. We can already see the results of this work, as in the first company already visited Georgia this month and they already have concrete interest over the country. We're still negotiating with 3 other funds on their potential visiting dates, and we're in communication with the other 4 to propose additional different project in Georgia. So definitely this is a very result-oriented direction already.
Okay, and we do have one visit already, which has been held just a few days ago. It's quite big company, maybe fund even more, called Masdar. They're quite active generally in our region, and they visited us. What was the purpose of their visit, and did they highlight any concrete interest of their sphere? It should be renewable energy, in my understanding.
For sure, Masdar has a large share in renewable energy. They themselves are a subsidiary of one of the largest funds in UAE. So we actually met this fund before when we were visiting with the minister. So this was a follow-up meeting in that regard. So their actual interest is towards renewable energy in Georgia as well. We're already in some concrete exchanges in terms of information, and Ministry of Economy is providing this information to them. We're expecting that hopefully towards December or maybe start of next year, we'll have some more progress on the actual project they're interested in. But for sure, I mean, interest from companies like Masdar is what we're looking for as a country in terms of renewables, of course.
Okay, you mentioned as well Georgia, absolutely correct. Just a few weeks ago, they've signed the MOU, or maybe already the agreement, with the Armenian counterparts, government, etc. involved. Where do we stand as a country? What is our competitive advantage? Still, we are in a, I cannot call it, unfortunately, post-COVID period. It's an active COVID period, and worldwide and in Georgia as well. But do we remain with some advantages? What you are trying to use during this negotiation or preparations for the final decisions with the investors?
For sure, for the past 2 years, what we've been orienting on is what we call efficiency-seeking investors. So these are the investors who are looking for better operational destinations, and this is something that has become even more prominent after the COVID or post-COVID era of the world. So what we're basing the proposition of Georgia on is not only what Georgia has to offer, but what's going on in the region and the regions beyond. So we're looking at places like Eastern Europe, where we see that costs are rising in terms of labor costs and in terms of operational costs. So this is a natural trend for investment that have to move at some point in the stage because it just becomes too expensive to operate in one or the other direction. The second big trend worldwide is diversification. So of course, naturally, at the beginning of the pandemic, everybody thought that every company was going to leave China, for example, right? That trend has changed and has moved into idea of every company will need to diversify their supply chains. So looking at these two propositions, what Georgia can offer is competitively priced labor force, competitively priced operational expenses, and in addition on all of this, of course, is a logistical and the geographic situation of what we offer as diversification of supply chains, that not all of your supplies come from one specific region, because this will become a dominant factor after the COVID period.
We will still remain at the competitive at the country.
We strongly believe, because we ourselves have updated the propositions. What we call is we go through a technical process of preparing a proposition, right? We look at a sector, we look at its sub-directions, and after this we prepare the study on what could be a value proposition as it imagined. So this includes costs and other needs which investor might be interested in.
During the process, while preparation of our interview, we have another update coming. Well, it's not actually from Turkey. It's an opportunity for Turkish companies to use Georgian market to produce here. And just correct me if I'm wrong. It's called diagonal cumulative production in Georgia. Am I right?
Yes, quite correct. So this is
what kind of opportunity it creates for Turkish companies?
This is a very important agreement for us, of course, because this means that Turkish inputs can be considered under Made in Georgia region, which creates additional opportunities for both Turkish companies and Georgian companies to actually start exporting products into the European Union. This was something that we're aware about for more than a couple of years now, but we particularly focused in on the start of this year. We, of course, have a company called OCO Global, which we started working with at the start of this year, and they have a special representative in Turkey, and we already conveyed this information at the start of the year for them to start negotiating with this proposition already in hand with Turkish companies, because we knew that this was coming up, and especially companies like electronic manufacturing companies, apparel production companies, furniture as well, will be some of the bigger beneficiaries of this direction.
Okay, and could you update us in regards of Concentrix entering Georgian market? I consider it also a part of follow-up story, I mean, in this regard.
This was definitely a major achievement for the country and for our agency as well. I mean, this is not only just one company entering the country, this is a message that Georgia is strong and it has this sector on a quite good presence. Concentrix is one of the top 5 companies within their own industry, so they employ thousands of people worldwide. So them entering the market not only sparked, let's say, trust in the country, but it also sparked interest of other companies which are already engaged with us, and we're actually in negotiation with them on potentially also entering the market. So this is a very interesting sector because it has very much high value added, it's intellectually based, it's export oriented, so it has all the good qualities of what we envision in terms of having quality investments in the country.
What the issue, I mean, I can call it a success story of major case in Georgia, issue for a company like Concentrix is to enter Georgian market?
So of course, we call them anchor investors, right? The investors which took the first step to create an industry here. So when Majorel got started, they were only operating with a handful of, let's say, 100 or 200 people, and they now have grown to become over 2,600 individuals covering 3 different locations in Georgia, and we're negotiating with them on the 4th location. So definitely they're the creation story of why BPO even exists in the country and why we're a success in this case. So for sure, you know, it's hard to say that you helped your competitor to enter the market, but for sure, Majorel's presence here in the country was what allowed us to attract companies like Concentrix to also trust in this country as well.
Thank you so much for your time, and good luck to you and good luck to Georgia.
Thank you so much.
Minister of Economy Natia Turnava declares that another lockdown is not planned in this country. According to her, the businesses will continue to operate and fight the pandemic by controlling safety rules and improving vaccination rates. Earlier this year, we decided to fight the pandemic without lockdown by controlling safety rules and speeding up vaccination. So, we are not planning any lockdown even now. We are sure we can speed up the vaccination. We are convinced that only in this way we can defeat the pandemic, and businesses must continue to operate, Turnava mentioned.
This statement is especially important for the tourism industry, and here we have new stats about visitors to the protected areas of Georgia. According to the Agency of Protected Areas, as of September 30, the number of visitors in this field has more than doubled compared to the same period of last year and amounted to around 501,000 visitors. Among the visitors, 48% are citizens of Georgia and 52% are citizens of other countries. The agency also reports that the number of foreign visitors has increased more than 10 times in 2021.
Georgian nature and culture was in the center of attention for Forbes USA. They just tried to figure out why our country is equally perfect for vacation and long-term remote work. The author of this article mentions that Georgia is a small but mighty country, attractive to a wide range of travelers and even remote workers.
There's something for everyone here. Beach enthusiasts, wine lovers, foodies and mountaineers can all travel here and enjoy a once-in-a-lifetime experience. If you happen to fall in love with the country along the way and want to stay longer, it's very easy to do that. Georgia has a unique visa which allows foreigners to stay for up to a year, which makes the country extremely attractive to remote workers, reports Forbes. You can read the full overview on Forbes US webpage.
Well, you know that increasing numbers of visitors means more pressure on energy resources. In this field, we also have a lot of challenges. The electricity system commercial operator reports that Georgia imported 1 billion and 716 million kilowatt hours of electricity from January to September 2021, which is 85.1% more than the same period of last year. As of the report, 61% of electricity was imported from Russian Federation. The rest of the demand on electricity imports was covered by Turkey and Azerbaijan, despite the fact that electricity prices from Russia are lower compared to our other neighbors. In this period, experts already see growing risks coming from energy dependency on Russia. What does this mean of energy imports for our country? On this, I talked to Georgi Abramishvili, Executive Director of Georgia Renewable Energy Development Association.
It's a very dangerous statistic what we have, because we see now what is going on in Europe, that in Europe the prices of the electricity are tripled, and we see that a lot of manufacturers are also stopped because of the increase of the electricity price, and this increase is caused because of the deficit in the natural gas delivery from Russia to Europe. So it means that Russia is manipulating and speculating with their natural resources towards Europe. So, and of course, for us it can be very dangerous, and this dependency is growing. And at the moment when Russia will decide that for their political reasons or some economical reasons, they want to use this strategy and their resources for a manipulation, they will use it.
According to the electricity system commercial operator, Kartli wind power plant generated 7.1 million kilowatt-hour electricity in September 2021, which is down by 15.5% year-over-year. As of the data from ISCO, wind power generation amounted to 62.4 million kilowatt-hour in the first 8 months of 2021, which was 10.6% 4% less compared to the same period of the last year. We also should mention that as for September 2021, the volume of electricity generated by power facilities in Georgia was up by 29.3% and reached 1,100,000,000 kilowatt hours.
Very thematic news. High time to dig deeper into the energy sector. Then, securing Georgia's energy future, HGEF program is around 16 million USD 5-year project implemented by Deloitte Consulting and funded by the American people via the U.S. Agency of International Development, or USAID. The purpose of HGEF is to improve Georgia's energy security by reducing the sector's susceptibility to malign influence through sound long-term policy making and governance, increased private sector investment in renewable energy production, including wind, solar, and hydropower, building the capacity of Georgian institutions to effectively and sustainably manage domestic energy markets, and improve the energy sector resilience to cyber threats. Daniel Potash, Chief of Party, USAID Securing Georgia's Energy Future program, sat down for an interview with the Checkpoints. Today we'll be talking about this Securing Georgia's Energy Future program, which is a 15.7 million USD 5-year project implemented by Deloitte Consulting and funded by the American people via the USAID. First of all, thank you for this support. So what is the main purpose of HGEF?
Well, the main purpose is to align Georgia with the European Union energy framework, to help promote clean energy, renewable energy, which is the future, to help with energy planning so we have a vision for how that future is going to look, to implement market forces so that there is the lowest prices for the consumer and so that there's a fair deal for producers, and finally to help in energy security, which is a big problem worldwide and in Georgia as well.
The HGEF, as I have read, helps Georgia diversify its sources of energy while building a resilient, competitive, and transparent market that is attractive to private sectors. A lot is said by this one short sentence. So let's start from evaluating the sector itself, because on the one hand, it seems that the sector is attractive to the investors, but on the other hand, we see this opposition towards the development of this sector through different groups of the society. Namakwani case, other 84 projects that are pending right now, Nenskra, which is also a large HPP in Georgia. How can this program help to solve some of these problems that are actually in attitudes, so to say?
Well, I think there's two approaches. One is that we can help look at best practices around the world and see what can be useful in Georgia that people are doing successfully elsewhere. But having said that, you can't just copy and paste what happens in Germany to Georgia. Our program is going to help work out issues because these issues are unique to Georgia, and every country and every situation is unique, so that there's a lot of smart people here, there's a lot of talented people, and I view our project as helping to learn about what people are doing that's useful, but also to work together and work out these solutions in a mutually acceptable way.
But Namakwani case is against everything that you just said, and this is a real case and real message to future investors as well, unfortunately.
Yes, Namakwani is going to be scary to investors who are looking at long-term putting capital at risk in Georgia, and I can say that the Namakwani from what I have looked at it, the technical analysis was done well. I think the contracting was done well. It was an open, competitive tender with 19 bidders and with 3 shortlisted, and then with the good companies that were selected. So I think it has a good basis. Then I think the community relations were handled pretty well, and I think the local community was relatively satisfied. But then other forces became involved, and I think in Georgia, other forces get involved with disputes so that there's argument that is beside the main point of is Namak a good project that should be built, and was the process legal and just? So I think that our project can help with strategic communications with Namak and with other issues, because these communications are built on trust. And trust is built on communications and respect. And I think that, being an outsider, I think you'll always have disputatious parties that try to get involved, I think for illegitimate reasons. So I think that we want to try to keep the debate focused on what's best for Georgia.
Yes, speaking of strategic communication, if we look like for several years, if not considering like last couple of years, this sector was really open and really appealing for FDI, and we saw big projects, and we have electricity now because of that, right? But it seems to me that the country took granted that this interest would be there despite everything. Do you see what Georgia wants from its energy sector, how it sees the development of energy sector? Do you see a long-term planning and long-term strategy in place? Because it seems that we are now speaking about developing the sector without having this step-by-step strategy or action plan how to develop the energy sector in Georgia. Will SGF help in that way as well?
Well, I hope to, and I think that this sitting now in the middle of October, when you have the COP21 happening in Scotland next month, where the world is going to come together and debate how do you approach climate, and how do you approach energy, and how do you have a society with energy justice and with clean energy that's affordable and reliable. So I don't see Georgia as an example of bad planning compared with the rest of the world. The world is struggling with these issues, and there needs to be a major transformation, and not just of the energy sector, because I think you quickly look at transportation, and in Georgia 75% of the electricity is already carbon-free. Georgia is a very clean country with respect to its electricity sector, but with respect to the transportation sector, it's still 95% fossil-based, probably more. So I think that we need to electrify the transportation sector here, and also build up the clean energy sector with wind and solar. And these are all debates that are very serious. And I want to bring in one more aspect, which is that it's not a debate amongst, I'm going to say, old energy experts like me. This is a debate that has to involve the younger people. Look at Greta Thunberg, who's saying, blah, blah, blah. and I think that we have to involve the young people. So our program is building 2 courses for younger people in energy planning and in cybersecurity. We're working with Georgia Technical University, and we have a strong mandate and a desire to engage with the younger people who can get into the energy sector and help make it clean and green and affordable for everyone.
When we're speaking about diversifying energy sources in Georgia, meaning wind and solar in particular, first that developing these directions is still not very cheap, right? And the second, we hear from different experts that you cannot develop these directions unless you develop hydropower as well. What is the interrelation there, and what are some of the trade-offs there?
The reason to develop hydropower in Georgia is because for a relatively low cost of building it, you can get a lot of kilowatt hours. It's not just that the hydropower is good to balance the wind and solar. Wind and solar is variable. When the sun doesn't shine, there's no solar energy. When the wind doesn't blow, there's no wind energy. But there are new technologies that are very interesting. For short-term energy storage, battery is becoming increasingly cost-effective, and hydrogen is very exciting. Hydrogen is the future of Europe, and you have a big pipeline going through Georgia, which links now physically, and gas deliveries are coming to Italy through Georgia on the Southern Caucasus pipeline. So those are very exciting. Now, the hydro projects, when I came to Georgia first in 2013, and I learned about how cheap it was to build hydro and how cost effective, I kept asking, well, are these numbers, are these true? These projects are great. And then when I came back to Georgia in 2018, and people talk to me about the wind projects that were here. They're very low cost. They're very cost effective, and the wind regime here, the windiness in Goree and elsewhere in Georgia, is extremely cost effective. So the solar resource is good. It's not as good as Abu Dhabi in the desert, but it's very good. So this portfolio is the way to go with energy, and you want to have diversification of technologies and of sources of supply. So all these things are good objectives.
One of the purposes of this project, what I have read, is to ensure that Georgian households, businesses, and public institutions have stable access to affordable energy. What is affordable energy, and is it realistic to have affordable energy when we are in this process of approximation to EU standards and market liberalization, a big reform that we are facing right now?
Well, the EU standard calls for appropriate levels of subsidy for vulnerable population. And this is very important because electricity, I mean, we have to say that electricity is almost a right, because for modern life you have to have electricity. You have to have communications. We use cell phones, we use the internet. And so to have access to electricity is critically important. And we have issues of fairness and price that have to be fixed with levels of subsidy that are workable. Georgia has a GDP per capita of about $5,000 US per year. And so
we are 106th among
106th.
Yeah.
So,
in the world,
we're not going to be able to have the energy supplies of a Denmark or a France, but on the other hand, the amount of electricity needed here is less because the weather is better, and it's not as much electricity is needed.
Yeah, because today if we look at international rankings, we can see that with, for example, tariffs, Georgia is really appealing for doing business, right?
Yes.
So it will be some kind of tough line so
Yes.
that Georgia
Yes.
kind of maintains its competitiveness, especially in the medium term. How is SGF approaching this issue?
Well, we're working with the government on the energy policy, and we hope to be giving our ideas and how the energy policy should be shaped so that the tariff structures are reasonable and fair and understood and accepted by. Nobody likes to pay their electricity bill, so it's but it should be something that you accept because the service is good enough and you can get by.
Yes, and on the other hand, these low tariffs kind of impede with infrastructure development as well from the company's side, right? So what is the focus of SGF on infrastructure development, and what are some objectives there?
Well, physical infrastructure, what in the U.S. they call iron in the ground, is necessary for electricity reliability. So you shouldn't have too much dependence on imports. You should rely on imports on a short-term basis when the market allows it, but markets fluctuate, and sometimes there's high prices that are available in neighboring countries, and sometimes they're low prices. And one of the other big advantages for an open market with really open borders for electricity trade is that gives you the system reliability. Because you can have system reliability with batteries, with hydrogen, with hydroelectric projects. But the best practice in the world is that strong bonds with your neighbors for trading gives you the best reliability.
What is the approach towards PPAs? Because this is something that is really criticized by IMF, and also if we look towards the statements of these opposition parties towards hydropower development, they are finding their reasons in PPAs as well. So what will be the approach towards PPAs?
Well, PPAs, actually the PPAs that are offered in Georgia are not really firm fixed price PPAs for all the year. They're only partial year is there a firm fixed price, and the rest of the year is a market price. And so this is a blended PPA, and it's a good approach. And I think that you shouldn't give a fixed price agreement if you don't have to. You shouldn't lock yourself in. But on the other hand, if you don't lock yourself in, you're exposed to the market. Well, we're sitting in Forbes, so Forbes has to be the citadel of portfolio theory and approach, like I learned in business school. And in business school, you learn that a portfolio approach is what you should have. You should have a balanced portfolio of stocks, of bonds, of short-term, of long-term, and the same is true in electricity.
So to summarize our conversation, what does this program wants to achieve after 5 years when it ends, right? Because it's a 5-year program. What should Georgia have after these 5 years?
Well, I love that question. There should be something built. There should be projects finished that are there's nothing, I mean, in my career, what we love to do is to go to a groundbreaking and see the project started, but I think to see the project actually working, it's thrilling. And that's I hope to connect with the young people that are studying, that are so good and so smart, and so that they can participate in this also and see these clean energy projects built.
Elena, let us, our viewers and followers, that we have good news for them. As of today, we will be putting together a brief review of the regional news as well, so that our readers and followers have a better understanding of what's going on in the region around us as well.
Turkey's central bank cut interest rates for the second successive month on Thursday in what economists interpreted as confirmation of its loss of independence from President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Turkish Minute reports with reference to agency France Press. The bank cut its policy rate to 16 from 18% despite soaring inflation and a depreciating currency. The lira hit new record lows against the dollar and euro after the announcement.
Armenia's environment ministry plans to gradually replace official cars used by government officials with electric vehicles in order to reduce the cost of their operation and fuel. According to a post on the ministry's Facebook page, the budget of the program, which is to be implemented with the assistance of the Global Environment Facility, is about $5.4 million. Of this amount, the government plans to invest $4.5 million through tax and custom benefits, ARKA reports. As part of the program, the Armenian government will buy 12 electric cars for the needs of the government and build 2 filling stations. From 2018 to the present day, the fleet of official cars serving government and parliament officials has been cut by 172 vehicles.
From January through August this year, Georgia imported 940,600 cubic meters of national gas from Azerbaijan, worth 184 million USD, 18% less in 2020, said the National Statistics Office of Georgia. In the first 9 months, Georgia also imported 181,000 tons of oil and petroleum oils from Azerbaijan, worth around 98 million USD, 13% more than a year earlier, reporting Forbes.
Gazprom has rejected the opportunity to maximize gas sales to Europe for the second month running, with the Russian gas currently booking only a small share of available additional pipeline capacity for November. The company did not book any additional capacity on pipelines running through Ukraine to the European Union for the month, and ordered just a third, 31 million cubic meters per day, of the space on the EML pipeline running through Belarus and Poland, the Moscow Times reports.
The decision caused gas prices in Europe to fluctuate in trading Tuesday and Wednesday. Spot prices for natural gas in Europe are trading near record highs amid concerns over low storage, a possible cold winter, and weak performance of renewable sources over the summer.
Russia has been blamed for holding back on supplies and seeking to use the situation to secure fast-track approval for its controversial Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Russian President Vladimir Putin said Russia is ready to provide more gas to the continent. Gazprom says supplies to the European Union running near record volumes over the course of the year, and that was prioritizing refilling Russia's own gas storage facilities ahead of the winter. Ahead of the winter, resulting in a 30% increases in supply to the Russian market.
But with that process due to be completed by the end of October, the refusal to book additional capacity on pipelines to Europe for November looks set to prolong Europe's gas price crisis and trigger fresh criticism of the Russian energy giant.
And time approaches, Lena, for the exclusive interview that was conducted in a Forbes studio by you and George. Advisor to the Prime Minister on Foreign Direct Investment, Basil Hudak, visited Forbes in person for the sit-down interview, right?
Correct, David. After the loan refusal developments with the EU, I sent out an email to Basil Hudak and he agreed. And then he appeared in Tbilisi with Slovakian business and government delegation for a business forum that was held in Tbilisi last week. The visit was really short, but Mr. Hudak still found time to talk with the checkpoints.
But not very surprising, since both you and Georgi knew Mr. Hudak before, right?
Yes, Basil Hudak was the vice president of the European Investment Bank between 2016 to 2019. He served as Minister of Economy of the Slovak Republic from 2015 until 2016. Before that, he was State Secretary of the Ministry of Finance and representative of the Slovak Republic on the Board of Governors in the European Stability Mechanism. From 2019, Mr. Basil Hudak joined Globsec as a vice chairman. Hudak has been a member of the Investment Committee of the Czech Development Fund since February 2021. In addition, since January 2021, Hudak has been the chairman of the Supervisory Board of the Czech Investment Fund for Gimel. David, let's stop here because I think Georgi Sagadze can already talk to us from the Forbes studio. Georgi, welcome to the Checkpoints. And before we run the full interview right after the Checkpoints ends, please share your thoughts on our conversation. What were some of the main takeaways from the interview for you personally?
David, Elena, good evening and all the best to you and our followers. The main takeaway was the fact that Mr. Hudak is on a part-time job here as the advisor of the Prime Minister of Georgia, and that not only Georgia is on his list of consultancy, and besides we found out what the reason was for the Rothschild family visit to Georgia, and our viewers and followers will get to know more from our interview. But let me come back to you with the same question, and please summarize your main takeaways from the interview as well.
To me, Georgi, the most debatable part of the interview, and not going into politics here because this is not really our main beat, was the statement that the era of big HPPs, hydropower plants, seems to end in Georgia. Mr. Hudak said this based on local resistance that these stations face, and almost all big systemic hydropower plants are stalled in Georgia right now. And besides, the idea of some sort of hub, be it a fintech hub or a battery storage hub, seems still to be relevant for this country.
Well, thank you both for these interesting insights. Goodbye, Georgi, for now, and thank you for working hard this week, especially for the checkpoints.
Pleasure is mine. See you.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you for watching us, and see you next Sunday.
But before that, watch our exclusive interview with Basil Hudak, and by all means follow us on Forbes.g and BM.g anytime for more news and analysis on business and economics. Till Sunday.
Thank you so much for visiting us, dear Basil. Always pleasure hosting you. And it's been a while.
Yes,
it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years, correct.
That's correct, yes, exactly.
We know and we've delivered various news about yourself, but at the same time, we need to understand the mandate you're covering through your contract. I mean, doing and serving Georgian government, especially Prime Minister, in the field of investment. And then we will follow some cases as well. Please.
Sure, yes. Great to see you. Great to be with Forbes again. And yeah, when I finished my work as vice president at the European Investment Bank, which was at the end of 2019 in Luxembourg, and I was thinking about my future career, what to do, I decided that I would go into a kind of advisory consultancy role with governments and companies in Central Eastern Europe, area which I know, I think, quite well, and where I have some experience.
You do.
So I'm actually involved in different projects with different government entities and.
So it's not just Georgia.
It's not just Georgia. Yes, it's not a full-time job. It's a part-time arrangement, and it is based on the fact that we have known with the Prime Minister of Georgia we have known each other for some time. And when we met, I think it was back in March or April, he basically suggested that I could join his team of advisors as advisor who would focus on foreign investments.
It was already 2021.
It was already 2021, so this year. So it's very recent arrangement. So it's part-time. It's focused on bringing more foreign investment into Georgia. And I'm basically one of the members of the group of advisors who work with the Prime Minister. Okay.
Can you identify, I mean, other governments, if it's not disclosed, of course,
yes.
You're serving and advising, and is it the same mandate, what you have in Georgia, or it's a bit different?
It really differs from country to country. So, for example, in the Czech Republic, I helped to create a kind of governmental fund, investment fund. It's called National Development Fund, where I'm a member of the board, so-called National Investment Council. And the idea of the fund is to invest into PPP, public-private partnership projects. So I think it's quite an interesting entity which brings some money from banks, from government together to invest into PPP projects. In Slovakia, I'm advisor to the governor of the National Bank of Slovakia, as well as on the board of largest Slovak bank called Slovak Savings Bank. And in Hungary, I'm on the board of Budapest Airport, which is the main international airport of Hungary. So these are some of the mandates.
Slovakia is the reason why Mr. Hudak is with us. He's
today.
He's accompanying governmental and businessman delegation
On business forum,
on business forum.
Correct. Yes.
How it goes is it was interesting and still goes on.
It still continues. Yes, it's a relatively quick visit. So we arrived only yesterday evening, and this evening we are already departing for Baku.
But never miss a chance to visit Georgia.
Come here.
Yes,
Also come here at the Forbes studio.
Forbes studio.
And Forbes, yes,
Exactly.
exactly. Yes. Tbilisi and Georgia is of course very close to my heart.
If you remember when Basil was appointed as advisor to Prime Minister, the only pictures which were distributed to the Georgian media were pictured in our studio.
Right?
with our screenshots.
That's great.
That's so true. And especially I have to thank him. This was just a mere email that we sent out to him, and he was ready to
It doesn't matter,
collaborate,
he's
and
vice
he was
president of
ready to
AIB or
answer.
consulting. It's Basil
Yeah.
We have
Hudak.
a close relationship.
Yes,
and
very,
it
very,
goes
very
beyond
appreciate.
a specific position or
Absolutely,
institution.
absolutely.
So yes, so I'm here with this time, although I come to Georgia, I would say every maybe 3 weeks to meet with different institutions, including obviously his Prime Minister and his office, Minister of Economy, Natya, Ministers of Finance, National Bank, international financial institutions, to basically, on one hand, to discuss what are the key impediments to foreign investment in Georgia, how we can remove some of the roadblocks, what are the opportunities, and also how we can bring more foreign investment into Georgia.
Can you share some details of this SWOT analysis with us? What do you see currently as parts of SWOT for Georgia?
Yeah, I think the analysis is a kind of ongoing process, and obviously we have now a very specific period of time because we are still kind of in the COVID situation, although gradually getting out of this. But the impact of COVID is still felt in terms of numbers of COVID cases, in terms of number of visitors who are coming to Georgia, also kind of some worry among the business people to travel internationally. So all these are things which are, I believe, short-term, linked to the COVID situation, but still they have a negative impact on business activity. So, as you know, there was a drop in GDP, in the economic activity, including investment last year. I think this year we see a very nice increase in the GDP, and I think IMF is predicting that it should be close to 8% and should continue also next year. So these are all good news for Georgia. I think what obviously what investors generally globally are always interested about is stability. Stability of government, stability of institutions, stability of
general situation.
Kind of general situation to make sure that in the country where they invest there is a stable forecast, is predictability, predictability of law, predictability of regulations, so that there are no sudden changes which will be caused by political shifts, developments or any other issues. And of course they want to make sure that the overall investment environment, meaning taxation, legal system, etc., that those are all friendly to the investment. So I think from this point of view, Georgia comes out pretty strong. It is, as we know, according to the latest, most recent Doing Business Index by the World Bank, number 7. And if doing business continued, but we have this situation in the World Bank, the IMF, linked to Kristalina Georgieva.
Yes.
And
she survived.
She survived. She's my good friend. I believe that unfortunately in this case she's a victim of a bigger issue, especially of some competition between the United States and China on broad range of issues. But this index was just one of the manifestation of this situation. But she survived. Whether the index will survive is a question mark.
Yes, indeed.
So
far it's been abolished. Yeah.
So far it's been abolished. Yeah. I think that some kind of measurement is
needed.
I think it's needed.
The world needs it.
Yes, I think it's a very good comparison. I mean, we can maybe argue whether this or that criteria is good or bad, and whether the analysis should be improved and be more kind of objective. But the index is very good because it gives a good picture. It's a kind of mirror, yes, for governments to say where we are. Yes.
Yeah, it is good for what? Is it good for like arising the interest on behalf of investors? Or
both.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's investors. Obviously, it gives some indication to foreign investors, especially those who I've never been to Georgia. It's one of 180 whatever countries there are in the world. Yes, so those investors, they usually use also doing business index as one of the indications for the investment. But it's of course very important mirror for the governments to see how they are doing, what could be improved. And in Georgia, and we had this discussion also today during the meetings of the minister, Georgia wants to get closer to the European Union. It was already mentioned today at meetings with Prime Minister and Foreign Minister that Georgia wants to apply officially for the membership in the European Union in 2024. It's not far, it's basically two and a half years. And there are many reforms which have to happen to be able to get to that level and to
Okay,
to
probably the next question is very clear what it will be. And
Yes.
my next question is, I remember your first public appearance, and then you were as the advisor of the Prime Minister, and you were talking about the youth support for the kind of like post-COVID period, and you were saying that one of the roles that you would have would be to draw as much support as possible for Georgia out of this pool of EU support. Then a lot of things happens, and then the Georgian Dream refused the second tranche of EU loan, and the reason was that Georgia didn't need any additional loans. However, recently, it was just 2 days ago, right, that the Deputy Finance Minister, Georgi Kakauridze, he admitted that this refusal stemmed from the anticipation that EU would deny this loan anyways, because it was a conditioned loan, and at stake was the most important reform for this country, and that's the judicial reform. And the reason EU would deny us this loan would be the mistreatment of Sharm el-Sheikh agreement as well. Did the Prime Minister consult with you before saying no to this second tranche of the EU loan? And in general, what is your take on this development with our relations with the EU?
Look, I mean, this is very, I would say, very internal, really domestic politics. My agreement with the Prime Minister is that, and frankly, this also reflects my preference, personal preference, is that I don't want to be too much engaged in domestic politics, because I don't see
preference and mandate as well.
And mandate as well, yes. I mean, my role is not to negotiate in between different political parties or to say who is right, who is wrong. I'm doing, or I want to do my work, especially in bringing for investors for the country, because I think it's good for Georgia. I think that Georgia is the country which has good environment for investment. So,
however, I would argue that this indirectly touches also your mandate and also your responsibility to draw more investments to Georgia, since you agreed to this, because indirectly investors might interpret this refusal also as the less commitment to the judicial reform, and we both know that this reform is crucial for property rights, and not only for citizens but also for doing business in Georgia.
Yeah, as I mentioned in the few minutes ago, of course, the issue of stability, of transparency, of predictability are very important for investors. This includes also judiciary, independent judiciary. It includes independence of courts and court system. So obviously, and I told the Prime Minister openly that obviously such situations as have now arisen with the European Union vis-à-vis the appointment of judges or members of the courts, that this is obviously something that creates question marks for investors. Frankly, for me, it's very difficult to judge whether the way how it was handled was relevant for the internal situation or not. I think that what is important for every government, and look, inside European Union, you have governments like Poland, yes, where the government has been appointing judges. where there was recently a decision made by the Constitutional Court basically saying that in certain cases the Polish legislation is superior to the EU legislation, which is not liked by Brussels or by the European Commission. So these things happen not only in Georgia or outside of European Union, they happen also inside European Union. That's why, for me, again, I don't want to judge whether this was right or wrong decision. For me, it's important that the message which was sent to investors is a message of some instability and unclarity. So what I advise Prime Minister is to to clarify and to make clear communication to the investor community why these decisions were made as they were made, and to make clear that this is not going to influence in a negative way independence of judiciary.
Of course,
yes.
Even from the technical point of view, we look at this refusal. I mean, the EU loan was much cheaper than the loans that the government had to take afterwards, including COVID support as well, and that's why I'm asking you this question. I remember somewhere around in July, it was 2019, still when you were still the vice president. Yes, the EIB vice president, and you said that you were proud that you saw that Georgia was the leader in terms of getting support per capita. Yes, per capita. So do you think this is also kind of question marks not only to the investors but to the donor community as well? Because probably you need to work with them also closely so that this bringing in FDI is kind of like a coordinated process in the country.
Look, I mean, when you look at Georgia from outside, yes, I know that internally this is an important issue, heavily discussed, very emotional. But frankly, when you look at Georgia from outside, it looks pretty good. Yes, and the recent outcome of the recent local elections, where the governing party received over 47% of votes. I mean, in Europe, you don't have a governing party which would receive more than 40%. You have most of the parties in Europe are coalitions. These are parties which are somewhere around 20, 25. If somebody gets 30%,
what just happened in Germany?
It's already a lot. Yes, exactly. It just happened in Germany. The same in Czech Republic recently. Yes, you have coalition parties or governments which are very difficult to govern. And
we need to grow here, because if we do not have 51, it's a part of heartbreak.
That's true. So for me, look, I mean, elections are the most democratic way to show what is the feeling of population. And the population basically said, okay, I mean, there are ups and downs, there are maybe things which are not completely okay, but in general, we like the way how Georgia is governed, and we are ready to give another mandate to the government and to Georgia Dream, because this is the governing party, and this was a kind of, for me, a referendum on the government in the recent elections. So yes, of course, issues like appointment of judges, independence of judiciary, they are important, but we should not over-exaggerate. We should not make this kind of main issue that is going to now change the whole situation and picture of Georgia outside. So let's resolve these issues. Let's find a way how to make sure that in the future such situations are not repeated, but I would say let's not make a drama out of it.
Yeah, we're not making a drama, but these are the questions. Please let me focus on the energy sector for a moment here, please, because this sector was very open to the foreign direct investment. It is definitely appealing to the foreign direct investment, but we see these declining figures, and we cannot necessarily link this decline trend of decline to the pandemic, unfortunately. Also, in this sector, we have the Namakwani recent case. We have 84 projects that are still pending because of the opposition from some groups of within the society. What is this message? Because these are already anecdotal evidences, right? We have been working on that, and we see that there are like 12 international arbitration cases ongoing already against Georgia. What is this signal, and what does this say about the business environment in Georgia for the investors?
Well, I think it shows that in Georgia you have very strong local democracy, and I mean local groups, mostly environmental NGOs, etc. They have a strong say and influence on these projects, which is a good side of the story. The bad side is then that, of course, many of these projects get kind of stuck in their development. And in general, the situation in the energy sector, as you know, is of course based on the fact that there is a lot of hydropower in the country, which is good because it's a green, clean source of energy. On the other hand, it creates many kind of ups and downs in the electricity supply, because there is water usually in spring, yes, when the snow is melting, but then especially during the winter time, there is actually lack of electricity, and Georgia has to import a lot of electricity. I think in general Georgia needs more diversified sources of energy, of electricity, including other types of renewables. Kind of decrease the dependence on hydro, and to increase especially solar and wind, which are also green sources of energy. But for this to happen, because they are also intermittent sources, so they create a lot of pressure on the grid. And basically, according to the calculations, and there are some studies going on by European Investment Bank and also by some other consulting companies, they show that any increase in the production of renewables and any new investments in renewables, especially in solar and wind, would require some solution on the energy storage side.
Sure.
So that you have a possibility when there is oversupply of systemic balancing of the grid. And
do you think investors would risk to enter the sector where they see that a lot of projects are stalled, and when they see
there's some terminations in regards of Turkish company Enka, which was close to billion. You're very much aware of that.
Yes.
You are aware from your previous job about Neskra hydropower with the Korean company. So we are not just talking only about pending, what Helena has mentioned, projects which are more than 40. We are talking about terminated projects. So
those projects are also, we don't know whether they will be finally terminated or not.
The honest vessel status is unclear.
Okay. Well, my personal feeling, also based on what's happening, is that the era or the time of big hydro projects is over for Georgia. I think that because of the resistance, that's how I feel. Because I'm just watching what's happening in the country, a lot of local resistance to this type of big projects. So where I see the future is potentially smaller hydropower stations, and also diversifying clean energy into other renewables, meaning especially solar and wind. For this we need to balance the grid, and a big project which is now being developed and where I'm engaged, and I believe this could be very interesting for Georgia for other reasons as well, is to basically develop this energy storage system in Georgia, which will be diversified. Basically, in the future, I think that any developer or investor who wants to develop solar or wind or hydro should be also obliged to have a storage system, battery storage system next to it, which would allow to store electricity when there is oversupply, and then so it's balancing. And what I discussed with Prime Minister and also with Minister of Economy is that if there is going to be such a relatively big demand internally for batteries, for this battery storage, let's use it to also create a production of batteries in Georgia, because batteries are now a new segment of global economy, both for energy storage as well as for electromobility. So, and I think Georgia needs to identify few areas of kind of new strategic economic development and growth and investment. And I think this type of battery production could be very interesting niche for Georgia, not only for the needs of Georgia, but also for the whole region. So I'm talking about, we are talking about the kind of regional battery hub in Georgia, which will include the production of batteries, starting with battery storage, creating this decentralized battery storage system in Georgia. Also, I'm talking to my compatriot, Maroš Šefčovič in the European Commission, Vice President. The European Commission has funds for so-called battery academy. So basically we need to train people who would have the skills for this industry. And we can also develop, for example, battery recycling capacity. So we would have this kind of circular economy element from the production of batteries and the skills, training, and so on.
Sounds attractive.
Yes, and hopefully we'll see some new companies entering Georgia also, because if you look at the structure of FDI in Georgia, you can practically see no new investors, no new companies. They are actual foreign investors that are doing the business in Georgia. What is the remedy in that direction? What is your vision?
Well, I think that we, on one hand, we need to come up with some new attractive propositions, new interesting areas. I think this battery area, electricity or energy batteries are very interesting new opportunity where there are many investors. There is now a lot of money, I would say probably too much money for clean energy and green investments. So I think this is one area which is very interesting. We are also discussing with, for example, with Rothschild Financial Group.
That was my final question in this regard.
This potential idea of creating a regional financial hub in Georgia, because what we see in the financial sector and in fund and in fintech area, we see that many companies are moving or looking for new areas which will have good legislation, regulation, and so on. So we believe that Georgia could become such a hub for Eurasia, and we are starting to work on this. So I think we need to be kind of open-minded, innovative, and to identify also new areas which would correspond to new trends in global economy.
The acting head of Rothschild family, while visiting Georgia, you co-hosting her together with the Prime Minister. Let me say so. Now we understand the purpose of this visit, while having just general information while the visit was held. Was there anything missing, Mr. Hudak, while you are advisor to Prime Minister Karibashvili, besides the Rothschild family visit here, whether there was some interest for any groups you are engaged worldwide, not while being the vice president of the AIB, even before and after. So whether there was some other interests like Rothschild family, did we miss anything, or it's still on the pipeline?
Do we have a pipeline?
Yeah, there is a pipeline, and of course I cannot say that I know about every investor who is interested, but
you didn't miss much, trust me. In this regards. No, maybe on your behalf, if there anything we might miss. That's my question.
Well, as I mentioned, I think in this battery business there are, and we already had at least 3 companies globally from US, Europe, China, who came here to explore this opportunity for the investments in the battery industry. So this is something which is moving and I think very promising. We are working on this financial hub idea. So there are some fintechs which are also interested in this. There are some large industrial companies from Europe and USA which are also interested in moving some of the production here. It's probably too early to talk about the names, but basically for most of them it's the idea of Georgia becoming a regional hub and a springboard to expand the production to other countries in the region.
And my last question to sum up. Can Georgia's economy reach boiling point without FDI in the country?
I don't know what is boiling point. That's a big question. What would that mean in reality? No, I think that Georgia, and again, I come from Slovakia, so it's similar size of countries and economies, and in Slovakia, 85% of GDP is from exports. It's very much export-driven country, which allowed Slovakia to grow and to develop economically, also to increase the living standard for its citizens. So I think Georgia also is kind of destined to be an export-driven economy, which means that it requires foreign investment, and I think that hopefully together with Georgian government, companies, with enterprises will be able to bring more investment here.
Yes, we're here to host you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.